What's up, Taiwan? I'm Louise with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The leader of the Taiwan People's Party is brushing off a fraud scandal that's engulfing his party. Ko Wen-je has addressed the allegations that the TPP falsely reported political expenses during his presidential campaign. Rick Glout is following the story for us from Taipei. Rick, what has Ko been saying?
Well, the pressure is piling on Ko. That's mounting allegations and investigations over his presidential run, where he took on Taiwan's big political parties and upset the two-party system here in Taiwan. His message today is basically, bring it on. I've got nothing to hide. But he's facing controversy over more than $500,000 of political funds not properly declared. And the scandal is already taking in many people involved in his campaign. People have been taken in for questioning, offices have been raided. As you can imagine, reporters have been following Ko today. They've been trying to find out what he thinks about the investigations. They asked him whether this is a political witch hunt.
主席会不会担心被约谈？
约谈也很正常，也没有什么。如果中华民国政府效率都这么高，我们是很乐见，还是有信心的。因为我们这边这样，每一笔支出都有凭证嘛。
So what does this all mean for Ko and his political party? Well, the first thing we're going to be watching out for is whether he is indeed called in for questioning, and then we'll also be looking at whether he is listed as a defendant in any cases that are brought. Meanwhile, his political party, the TPP, support for them is plummeting, and they hold the balance of power in Taiwan's legislature. They've been working together with the main opposition party, the KMT, to go after the executive branch and pass controversial reforms that will give the legislature more power. Ko himself, well, he's a bit of a rising star. A lot of people have been looking at him to see if he'll run again for president in 2028. All of this political ambition, of course, now put at risk as the net tightens around him.
Thanks for that update, Rick. We'll be keeping an eye on the case. That was reporter Rick Glout on the scandals facing the Taiwan People's Party, Ko Wen-je. A labour rights movement started by firefighters is gaining momentum. Prison staff are the latest civil servants to join their calls for reforms. John Van Trieste explains.
Small but determined, a group of public sector workers gathers on this grey Taipei morning to air old grievances and make new demands. They represent a growing range of public employees who say they deserve the same health and safety protections private workers enjoy. With only a few exceptions, Taiwan's Occupational Safety and Health Act does not apply to civil servants. The government has made some concessions, at least for the firefighters who kicked this labor movement off after a fatal factory fire last year. But one firefighter here says that so far, changes to the law have been inadequate.
面对地方政府没有给我们消防员足够的装备时，没有罚则。再来，没有检举以及保护吹哨者的机制。这个消防法的治安篇章漏洞百出。
Police, legal clerks, and others say they're even more exposed, and the range of public workers calling for change is growing. Today, new allies, prison workers, are on the scene. They say that like the prisoners they watch, they aren't allowed air conditioning, all while having to walk the equivalent of 15 kilometers a day on patrols. And they say they face violence from prisoners and even revenge attacks from those who've been released. Prison staff have been assaulted with everything from chopsticks to hot water.
徒手啦，或是有些会持器具，比如说磨尖的筷子，或者是他们会藏一些地上捡到什么一些危险物品，之后他们会在地上这样整天磨成尖的。好，只要是任何塑胶物品或是一些稍微硬的东西，他们都可以磨尖做成武器，那会藏在身上。
Today, this group has proposed two small changes to the wording of the Safety and Health Act that would make it explicitly cover all public sector workers. TaiwanPlus reached out to the Labor Ministry's Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the Civil Service Ministry for comment on these changes, but didn't receive a response. While turnout has been small today, this group is trying to put pressure on officials to make sure the proposal isn't ignored. Activists here have organized a rally later this month that they say will be much bigger. So far this year, 10 police officers, 2 firefighters, 1 judge, 1 legal clerk, and 1 prison worker have died, either in the line of duty or from suicide. These protesters plan to mourn their fallen colleagues, but also to mobilize. John Su and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
The World Health Organization has declared Mpox a global public health emergency. So far this year, 17,000 suspected cases have been reported across 13 African countries, with over 500 reported deaths. The virus spreads through close contact, including sexual contact. Symptoms can include fever and painful skin blisters. This is the second time in 2 years that the WHO has made such a declaration, which allows more resources and funding to stop the outbreak.
It's clear that a coordinated international response is essential to stop these outbreaks and save lives. A public health emergency of international concern is the highest level of alarm under international health law.
A Taipei court has ruled against a transgender woman's request to change her gender identity on her government ID without undergoing surgery or a psychiatric evaluation. Irene Lin is at the courthouse with more.
A setback for Taiwan's transgender community today, as the Taipei High Administrative Court has denied a transgender woman named Vivi the right to change her gender identity on government IDs without undergoing gender-affirming surgery or a psychiatric evaluation. This is what her legal team has to say.
那么律师团这一边，应该会针对这个判决去做上诉。因为我们还是认为在这个案件之中，我们的当事人其实，他也没有医疗上的需求。如果强迫一个没有医疗需求的人去看医生，去拿证明，我们觉得其实是一件非常奇怪的事情。
The plaintiff Vivi was suing the government to waive the current legal requirements for her case. She insisted on providing only daily life photos of her and statements from her mother and friends as evidence. Her team argues that being transgender is not a mental condition. They say more than 20 countries, including Spain and New Zealand, have already granted individuals full freedom in choosing gender markers, and that Taiwan should follow suit. The judge says today that the evidence provided by Vivi is difficult to use an objective proof of her identity, meaning that some form of medical evaluation is still required. Now, this is just a ruling of a single case. There's no precedent in Taiwanese law, meaning that until the law is changed, each individual can fight their own case. But it's undoubtedly a big disappointment for those hoping this case could provide a breakthrough for Taiwan's transgender community. Many don't have the time or the resources to fight lengthy legal battles, and rulings like today's show that there are no quick fixes in gaining easy legal recognition for transgender people. Luffy Lee and Irene Lin in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
A TSMC packaging plant is going ahead after months of environmental assessment. Taiwan's Environment Ministry has now approved a revised plan for the project. It pledges to increase the use of recycled water and further reduce waste discharge. It also allows for more recycling of materials dug up on the site. Plans for the packaging plant in Jiayi had stalled over water and land usage concerns. The chip-making industry uses a lot of water and produces wastewater, which could impact local reservoirs. The local government says it has reserved land for the project.
那把这两个从化区相连，所以面积一共有367公顷。那刚好这边所产生的主食方未来可以合作，那就进入到整个从化区。
One diver has been killed and another 2 injured in southern Taiwan. The 3 were diving at a popular site near Kending National Park when they got stuck on a concrete seawall. One of the divers managed to climb out and call for help. When firefighters arrived, they pulled the remaining 2 out of the water. One of the divers later died from their injuries at a local hospital. The cause of the accident is still under investigation. The Taliban is marking the 3rd anniversary of their takeover of Afghanistan with a military parade. The group has overseen a worsening humanitarian crisis and a clampdown on the lives of women, a policy the UN has called gender apartheid. Rosie Greninger takes a look at how life has changed under Taliban rule.
Celebrating a national holiday in Afghanistan. marking 3 years since the Taliban returned to power. The militant Islamic forces seized the Afghan capital Kabul in August 2021. As US troops began their withdrawal and the US-backed government collapsed, with its leaders fleeing into exile. In desperation, thousands of Afghans also attempted to leave the country. But in 10 days, the Taliban was in full control and imposing their version of Sharia law.
ما په سات له خبرو کې وې چې موږ اولویت دا اوس موږ امنیت څنګه تامینولای شو او دا کار موږ کړی الحمدلله اوس تاسو کې افغانستان مطالعه کوي افغانستان یو ډېر قوي نظامی او امنیتي ځواکونه لري هم د اردو په برخه کې هم د پولیسو په برخه کې هم د استخباراتو په برخه کې.
As part of their anniversary celebrations, the Taliban paraded their military might at an airbase abandoned by US and NATO forces, with representatives from Iran, Pakistan, Russia and China present. They say their security forces have reduced the threat from terrorist organisation Islamic State Khorasan province, despite the group still carrying out attacks both inside and outside Afghanistan. The Taliban also claim under their strict rule, narcotics production has decreased to nearly zero. There is less corruption and more tax is collected. Freed from war, Taliban supporters are optimistic and enjoying a peace not seen here for decades. But not all lives in Afghanistan have improved, with the country facing a severe human rights and humanitarian crisis. The UN says a third of Afghanistan's 40 million population are struggling under a stagnant economy, with widespread unemployment and insufficient access to food. And the World Bank warns of zero growth over the next 3 years. After the Taliban takeover in 2021, the economy here was crippled by Western sanctions and billions of dollars in frozen assets. Few countries have formally recognised the Taliban government, with most of the international community condemning the strict decrees imposed on women and children. Women face restrictions on where they can work and socialise, and girls from the age of 13 are excluded from education. The United Nations says Afghan women feel their influence over decision-making at home has dropped almost 60% in the last year.
And just to give some context, 3 years ago, a woman in Afghanistan could technically decide to run for president. Now, she may not even be able to decide when to go and buy groceries.
This leading to a mental health crisis affecting 68% of women here. They are notably missing from the celebrations on Afghanistan's streets, making it clear that though the Taliban says the country is better off with them in charge, not everyone may agree. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Flights to and from the Italian island of Sicily are being disrupted by a massive volcanic eruption. Mount Etna, one of the most active volcanoes in the world, has seen a massive uptick in activity in recent days. Volcanic ash from its eruptions have caused a nearby airport to divert flights. Over 3,000 meters, Etna is the tallest active volcano in Europe. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, listen to this choir with children from Taiwan's indigenous Tainan group as they take part in a festival in Italy. I'm Louise Watt. Take care. We'll see you next time.